What's going on, you guys? So today I'm going to tell you about why my dad and Paul George have a little bit of beef. Now, it's not real beef, like they text each other saying how much they hate each other. Well, I guess that wouldn't be real beef, but what I mean is I doubt Paul George even knows who my dad is, and not to be like disrespectful or anything, but you'll see what happened this one time here in Vegas and why Paul George and my dad did not really hit it off on the right foot. So a few years ago, my dad was starting off his car dealership business, and everything was new, it was in the works, and something my dad wanted to do to just kind of get the name out there was drive for Uber, because he figured if he's driving people around that don't have cars and he hands them his business card when they're looking for a car, if they already like him from how nice he was as an Uber driver, then they might call him to get them a car. So that was kind of like the idea behind the whole situation. And a few summers ago, I believe it was summer of 2018, Paul George happened to be in Vegas. I don't remember if it was for like a summer league thing or for like anything personal. All I know is that Paul George was in Vegas. And so my dad, I'm not in the car with my dad when he does Uber. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever taken an Uber, but you don't typically have your own passengers along with you. The only people who you bring with you are just whoever the people are that order the ride. So I'm at home, and then when my dad gets home, he tells me, he's like, "Hey, do you know somebody in the NBA? He said his name is Paul George." And I'm like, yeah, I do know who that is. Why? And my dad says, "Oh, that's the guy I just gave a ride to." And I'm like, what? Wait a second. Like, at first I didn't believe it, because anybody could have said, "Oh, my name is Paul George." Like, if you watching this right now didn't know anything about basketball or about the NBA, and I walked up to you, let's say I'm a foot taller than what I am, and I say, "Oh, my name is Kevin Durant, I'm in the NBA," and maybe if I look a little bit like him or whatnot, I don't know, you might believe it. Okay, Lonzo Ball. A lot of people used to say I look like Lonzo Ball when I had a nicer haircut. Right now I'm like quarantining, no haircut, and when I had a little bit of facial hair, some people would say I look like Lonzo. But who knows, if I was 6'5" and you didn't know anything about basketball, and I kind of looked exactly like Lonzo, and I was like, "Hey, I'm Lonzo Ball," then you might believe it. So that's kind of what I thought it might have been with my dad, because he doesn't really watch NBA basketball. So I was like, okay, what are the odds it was really Paul George? So this is how I proved that it was Paul George, and I'm going to tell you how I proved it before I tell you what happened that caused me to create this video. So I went on Paul George's Instagram, and on his story he posted a picture that he was in Vegas. So I was like, okay, that automatically jumps it up like 20 points that it could be Paul George. Now, the second thing was, I asked my dad, I was like, was this guy like our height, like just an average height? And he said, heck no. He had to throw the seat all the way back, and his knees were pretty much up to the dashboard. My dad's recording this right now. Is that right, Dad?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. So like, what are the odds? Is someone looks just like Paul George. Paul George is in Vegas at the same time. This guy says his name is Paul George, and he's around 6'8" to 6'10". Like, that's a lot of coincidences to be putting like together, you know? So I don't know if on the Uber app they can still do this or not, but at least at the time they were able to do this. So I went on my dad's phone and I looked at the driver history, and the person who ordered the Uber was Paul G. That's all it told me. It said Paul G. So that already kind of like puts more and more things into perspective. And I asked my dad, how come you didn't take a picture with him or anything like that? And he's like, I don't know who the guy is. Like, he could have been like, I don't know. I'm not a fan of him or anything. So he didn't take a picture, which I understand. Like, if some random guy got in my car and I'm an Uber driver and I don't know who you are, I mean, would I take a picture? I don't know. I don't know. But no, I don't blame my dad for not taking the picture. It's not the end of the world. So this is when things start getting a little more juicy, right? You might be wondering, what exactly could your dad have said, or what could have happened for him and Paul George to not hit it off on the right foot? So a couple years ago, and just in case you guys don't know this, but Summer League happens in Vegas every single year. And maybe in like sometime when I was in middle school or not, Team USA was having a scrimmage at the Thomas and Mack. Thomas and Mack is where UNLV plays and where a lot of teams come to play, such as Team USA. So they were just scrimmaging amongst themselves. They were doing the blue team versus the white team, and I believe LeBron was on the blue team, and a bunch of big name guys were on the blue team, and then the reserves were kind of on the backup team. And they were just scrimmaging, and I believe it was around the third quarter Paul George broke his leg. Yep. That is the famous game where Paul George broke his leg. My family was there. We saw it all go down. Now, at the time, we didn't know that he had broken his leg because we weren't sitting courtside or anywhere near the court, to be honest with you. We were kind of sitting, I don't even really know how to describe it, but basically I saw Paul George go down and I recorded it on my phone, but I didn't know that he had broken his leg. And I'm probably gonna throw a clip in here just so I can prove that I was actually there and I'm not making this up. And then at the end, I turned the camera around to show me and my brother, so. All right, so here I'm recording the aftermath after Paul George broke his leg. At the time, we had no idea what the injury was. We just saw that he fell and that they were coming on a stretcher. I was maybe like 13 years old at the time, and it was Paul George, so I didn't really think that he could break his leg. So the thought never really crossed my mind. I just grabbed my phone and started recording. And in a second or two, I think I'm gonna turn the camera around.
He was on.
Yep, that's me and my brother like 7 or 8 years ago. So yeah, that's the proof. Like that should be proof in itself that my brother and I were at that game. Anyway, my dad is talking to Paul George in the car, and I don't know I don't know exactly if Paul George asked my dad if he's ever been to an NBA game or if my dad brought it up himself. Do you remember? Did he ask you or did you tell him?
I don't remember.
Okay, yeah, he doesn't remember either, but let's just say my dad told him that he went to an NBA game one time and that some guy broke his leg. Now, before I tell you how Paul George responded, I'm gonna tell you one more thing you need to know. So when Paul George broke his leg in the third quarter, Mike Krzyzewski, and if you don't know who he is the Team USA basketball coach, he canceled the game right there. So the paramedics came, they got Paul George, they put him on the stretcher, and everybody starts chanting Paul George's name. I saw the teammates were on the bench. They were pretty much in tears, you guys. They were like, oh my God, people were shaking. And you might even be able to find their reactions online, but these grown men were shaken up. And at the time, me and the other people in the audience, we had no idea what exactly was going on. We just knew that it must have been something pretty bad if they were taking him out on a stretcher and if his teammates were kind of shaken up. Now, I never even assumed that he broke his leg because I was maybe like 13 years old and I was like, it's Paul George. He's not breaking his leg. That doesn't really happen to superstars. Obviously, nowadays, everybody knows that that is what happened. But at the time, just being in the arena, I had no idea. I don't think anybody really knew what happened unless you were sitting courtside and you saw it for yourself. So now you know what happened at the game in case you didn't know already. And you know that my dad was there. And you know that Paul George and my dad were in an Uber together. So what could possibly go wrong, right? And just to let you guys know how bad it was that day at the arena, everybody in there was chanting, Paul George, Paul George, Paul George. And like I said, Mike Krzyzewski canceled the game after the third quarter. I remember some people were booing and other people weren't. Like my family wasn't. We're just not like the booing type of people, I guess. Anyway, fast forward a couple years. My dad is giving an Uber ride to Paul George. And like I said, my dad has no idea who the guy is that broke his leg or anything like that. This is exactly what my dad told me he said to Paul George, not knowing that Paul George is the guy who broke his leg. He was like, yeah, I've been to a couple NBA games, dude, and can you believe it? And one of them, they canceled the game because some motherfucker broke his leg.
Okay.
Now, I wasn't in the car, okay? I really wish I was, because this would have gone so viral if I recorded that, and oh my God, that would have been crazy. But I could just imagine the look. I would turn the camera. My dad said he remembers it like it just happened today. So I could imagine Paul George just gave him a, and then I remember my dad said, that was me. Now, if I'm Paul George, oh my God. Now, I couldn't imagine having your Uber driver be like, can you believe they canceled the game because some motherfucker broke his leg? And then you look at him and you're like, that was me. Yeah, like, so all of this happened, right? And then I went on my Snapchat and I just had to tell my friends like a quick summary of that, because that type of stuff doesn't just happen every day, you know? Like, I don't think anybody in the world has this exact same story to tell, okay? So I had to tell my Snapchat story. I kid you not, you guys, maybe like 5 minutes after posting it, one of my friends sends me a screenshot of one of Paul George's tweets. So I told the story on my Snapchat like an hour after it happened, because my dad told me when he got home, and I was like asking him a bunch of questions, and like when I finally got all the facts straight, I went on Snapchat and I told my friends the story. So a couple minutes after that, and by the time I posted it, it had been like an hour from the time Paul George and my dad got off the Uber to the time where I posted the story on Snapchat. And maybe 5 minutes after posting the story, one of my friends sends me a screenshot of a tweet from Paul George. Now, Paul George didn't say anything along the lines of, oh, I just had a horrible Uber driver, I can't believe he said this to me, or anything like that. He tweeted something very like cryptic, that it could have been about my dad, but it could have been about like anything else. It was something like SMH, some people, or some people piss me off. Like, it could have been about my dad, but it could have been about like, I don't know, his babysitter for all I know, you know? So, but it was tweeted like right at the same time as the Uber ride ended. So unless something else happened to Paul George that day, it was most likely about my dad. If I still have that tweet, I'll put it in here, but I don't even know if I saved it or not. So, and it's not like I can find it because he didn't mention the word Uber or anything in there, probably so that he doesn't get sued by Uber for just talking bad about them. Yeah, that's the story. And Dad, how big of the tip did he give you?
Zero.
Yep, you got a $0, 0-cent tip. So yeah, that's the story of how my dad and Paul George have a little bit of beef. Like I said at the beginning, I doubt Paul George remembers my dad. He probably remembers this situation though. Like, if for some reason someone sees this video who has like access to Paul George, ask them, be like, hey, do you remember a time where some Uber driver, and then just like ask him. And I'm genuinely curious to know if he remembers this or not. And does he? I have no idea. What do you think? Do you think he remembers this?
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? It's possible, but he could have also like brushed it off. So I have no idea. Yeah, that's about it. So I'm like 99.99% sure it was the real Paul George, even though my dad didn't take a picture. Because what are the odds? He was in Vegas, the Uber ride said Paul G. My dad said the dude was like 7 feet tall, and Paul George is between like 6'9" to 7 feet. He had to push the seat all the way back. Why would you just start saying you're Paul George from the NBA if you're not? Then you tweet something very cryptic afterwards. Like, too many things just have to be perfect for this to not be true. So that's why I'm like 99% sure that it really was Paul George. Now, chances are Paul George is never going to see this video, but if somehow Paul George does see this video, I would just like to hear his take on it. That's really all. I just want to know. No hate, Paul George. Like, I would have reacted the same way, you know, if I broke my leg, knock on wood, and someone called me a motherfucker, the reason why the game was canceled. And if I'm being honest, I think Paul George actually reacted better than like 99% of people. Someone else would have said F you or slapped my dad, or you know what I mean? Like, imagine if that was who would have in the NBA? God, who's an ass? Imagine if that was Ron Artest. If Ron Artest was the guy who broke his leg and then he got an Uber with my dad, and my dad was like, yeah, some mother. My dad probably wouldn't have made it home to tell me the story. Ron Artest would have probably like put him in a chokehold or something like that. So Paul George, I think he acted like a 10 out of 10 in that regard. But at least give him like a $5 tip next time. It's probably not going to hurt you. I've seen your contract, so help us out a little bit next time. That could have been like a chicken sandwich or a $5 footlong. Anyway, that's about it, you guys. I know I haven't posted in a minute. No real reason why. I've been learning about real estate and things like that, so it's just kind of taking up my time, but that's about it. And I'm sorry for the no cut. I'm quarantined, so I can't really get a cut. Anyway, that's about it. Paul George, please, if you ever see this video, even if it's in 10 years, I just want to hear your take on this. That's about it, you guys. Have a good one, and I'll see you guys pretty soon. Yeah, pretty soon. Bye.